Marital ambivalence tells us that we see the difference between where we'd like to be and where we are. These are all possible choices, but hanging out in the ambivalence without resolving it and letting it blossom and grow is going to bring bitter fruit for you, your partner, and your children. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. And today we're talking about to stay or not to stay, unpacking the first signs of marital doubt. And it's the beginning of a series on what is this ambivalence that I'm experiencing in my marriage and what do I do with it? Do I stay or do I go? We're going to do a number of episodes on this topic, exploring it deeply, because at the end of the year and beginning of the year, that's when this is really coming up for people as we move into those family events and we show up as a couple. Our harmony or lack thereof becomes really prominent in those situations. And so let me just say, everybody experiences marital ambivalence, and it's actually a good thing. What's good about marital ambivalence? Marital ambivalence tells us that we are still in the game. Marital ambivalence tells us that we see the difference between where we'd like to be and where we are. And the question really is, what are we going to do with that ambivalence? And how grounded is it? And let me explain why I think this is so important, right? I'm very fond of saying here at Rich in Relationship that everything new, original, and good comes out of difference. Now, let me say that again. Everything new, good, creative, and original comes out of difference. And so when two people are in perfect lockstep, perfect harmony, there isn't any difference, and nothing new or creative or juicy can come out of it. And let's get real. Do you know anyone who's in perfect lockstep? If you do, they're the same person in two different bodies. And we would never marry the same person because it's boring, right? We go through life having a relationship with ourselves, even within ourselves. There are different voices that speak and we resolve the differences. And out of that difference, we make choices that are either really good or really bad. And so this series is about identifying the differences in your relationship so that you can create something new and juicy together or apart, right? Whichever works best. I feel like I'm missing a piece there. The other thing is that even though we marry people that are different than us so that we can become stronger where they're stronger and they can become stronger where we're stronger, guess what? We're on a constant journey. The landscape of our relationship is constantly changing because the players are growing and evolving. And so as your partner grows and evolves, you are adjusting, growing, evolving to them. And those changes in themselves will drive a certain level of ambivalence. And so the question is it positive ambivalence or negative ambivalence? And where are you going to go with that ambivalence? So by definition, ambivalence is where we have mixed, usually opposing emotions about the same situation. And when we make decisions from a place of ambivalence, when we're not sure, everything that we produce out of that space reflects that ambivalence. So when we say, I love you to our partner, if a part of us isn't sure about that anymore, our partner gets it. When we go out and meet new people and they're interested in us, if we're ambivalent about our marriage, those people sense it and they will either choose to prey on it or not, depending on the messaging we give them. So being aware of this ambivalence and dancing with it is super important. And most of us, let's be honest, most of us have denial about our ambivalence. Most of us are like, Everything's fine. It's all good. You know what? The kids got to school. They fed. They went to bed. We had sex the other day. Everything must be okay. And we don't even want to know about that ambivalence. But what I'm saying to you is the ambivalence is what you want on top, resolving it to the best of your ability. And that sounds absurd, right? Because every time you resolve the differences that drive the ambivalence, I just told you what happens. People change and something new comes up. But the difference between that and not looking is tremendous. All right? When we're not looking at the ambivalence, the differences build and build and build, and we become roommates, not partners. We start leading parallel lives instead of walking hand in harmony. When we explore the ambivalence and look at how much of this is me, how much of this is them, how much of this is pressures from the outside that are impacting us both. When we start to unravel the ambivalence, we start to see the way through. And as we move through, we become stronger. We become stronger as individuals. We become stronger as a couple or as partners. Let's partners, because sometimes we move through the ambivalence and we decide we don't want to live together anymore for one reason or another. And we become stronger parents. And that's what I'm all about here, right? My passion is to help parents create bridges so that their children are nurtured and shielded or protected from conflict. That's my passion. That's what I'm in this for. So whether your ambivalence is taking you to separation and divorce, or whether your ambivalence is taking you to being closer as a couple living together, isn't really the point. The point is to resolve the ambivalence by whichever path feels healthiest to you, so that you are happier, so that you are living more creatively, and so that you have more bridges with the other person, either in a partnership around child rearing or a partnership around your shared goals in life and child rearing, right? Either way, right? One is a partnership where people are living separately, presumably, and have a partnership around child rearing. And the other is where two people are building a relationship and child rearing is a fruit of that relationship. But either way, when you resolve that ambivalence or be engaged in the game of resolving ambivalence as it comes up continuously in your lives, the stronger you become as individuals and the stronger that partnership, whatever kind of partnership it is, becomes. Whew, that was a mouthful, all right? And I've got to tell you, I have done this both ways. I have divorced someone, gotten so, the ambivalence became so overpowering that divorce was the only way through, the healthy way through for me. And I have had the ambivalence in my marriage become so strong that it drove me to work at being closer. And so these episodes are going to be an exploration of those two paths. What are the costs of each? How do you know which one to choose? So let's talk about some signs. Common signs that suggest ambivalence are emotional distance, like I was just talking to you about. When we're avoiding conflict or avoiding ambivalence, we tend to put some emotional distance. Or if we're in constant conflict, it doesn't feel safe, and so we're not going to be emotionally intimate. And the product of either distance or conflict is going to be a lack of intimacy. And I'm not just talking about sex here. I'm talking about feeling emotionally close. Now, that doesn't mean that every time we put a little distance between ourselves and our partner that we've destroyed intimacy. Sometimes we set a boundary with our partner to create some safety for ourselves, and that boundary opens the door for greater intimacy in the future. But I'm not talking about that here. What I'm talking about is when our ambivalence about the relationship is so powerful that we're either fighting or avoiding conflict, and we've got our point of view and they've got theirs, and there doesn't seem to be any resolution. And because there isn't caring communication, because there's no trust being built, trust is being eroded, and because there's a lack of or an inadequate amount of empathy, we're not being intimate. What are some subtle indicators that you may be overlooking? A subtle indicator might be that you think everything is just fine and you're very engaged in your own work. Or if you're the primary caregiver, you're very involved in the children and you're very happy doing what you're doing, and your partner is very happy doing what they're doing, but you're not investing in the relationship. So it's possible to have a lot of ambivalence and for both of you to be feeling really good about your individual lives and just be sort of accepting, well, this is how relationships are supposed to be. It's possible that your parents lived that way, or it's possible that this is a strategy that's working for you. And so when you go out to social events, you show up as two individuals and you very rarely present a united front. Another indicator might be the opposite. You go out to a family event, it's Thanksgiving. Well, look, what we know about Thanksgiving is it's a wonderful time to share. We share food, we share stories, we see each other's children. It's also the time where our dirty underwear comes out, because anytime you have family, food, and something that lowers inhibitions like beer or wine, which is not uncommon in Thanksgiving, what you're going to get is some dirty underwear. So it's not that unusual for couples to go to Thanksgiving and to be sitting there and they're telling a story together, and then one of them makes a snide remark about the other. Well, if she did this, da-da-da-da, it would have been different. Ha, 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 like it's a joke. Or vice versa, right? And that might lead to a reprisal, something a little more intense. And if the tensions are high and the ambivalence is unexplored, this is where the ambivalence will display itself. So if you're having these kinds of social exchanges, you probably got some pretty good ambivalence that's going on. Now, ambivalence can be driven by our own insecurities, our own unresolved traumas. What that means is, I'll give you an example from my own life. How's that? Yeah, let's show you my dirty underwear. I grew up in a household where if I didn't fall into line, I was exposed to very intense rage. And the trauma of that is that I either, when somebody started to show anger to me, even in gentle ways in a relationship, I would become subservient, being sure that something else was coming, or rather than being bullied, I would come back with an even more intense response. And so that was being driven by my trauma. Now, though it's true that my partner may have been dropping some emotional firecrackers here and there, my response to them was not 10, 20, or 30, but 40, 50, 60, 70, right? My response was loaded by the emotional energy of the unresolved trauma of my childhood. And so some ambivalence can be driven by that trauma. And when it's individually traumatically driven, it's going to be very hard to resolve, because the tendency when we come from that place is to blame the other person. Well, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have to be this way. We're getting ready to run a series for men in the October and November. As I do this, it's the beginning of October in 2023. Don't know when you're listening to this. So in October and November of 2023, we're going to do a series on understanding what drives our overreaction and how to manage that overreaction, some conscious tools for managing it, so that when trauma comes up, we recognize it for what it is and don't take it out on the people that we love. Now, of course, there are ways to resolve trauma, and that's something we do really well here, but that's not what we're going to talk about in this episode here. What I really wanted you to know is that there's a lot of work to be done around this, and that it's not uncommon for one or both people in a relationship to have unresolved emotion and limiting beliefs from their childhood that are driving this kind of insecurity and therefore ambivalence, right? Because naturally, when we're going from 0 to 60 and we have a tendency to blame the other person for us going there, that's going to bring up ambivalence, right? Because it's their fault. It's their fault I'm having this feeling. I didn't have this feeling until they did this, pushed this button, or said that. We can also have ambivalence from external sources, like maybe there's pressure at work. And when we bring that pressure home, we need to unload it somewhere. And if we unload it in a way that is not respectful of the other person's feelings, or that is the equivalent of kicking them instead of sharing it with them, that can drive ambivalence. And you can see how when you bring home stress and the other person has some trauma, that could be a really tough combination. There could be financial problems within the relationship that are going to drive this ambivalence. There could be familial expectations in the extended family that are pressuring the relationship and can bring up ambivalence. There could be actual relational issues like broken trust. Broken trust does not necessarily mean that you've been physically intimate with another person outside of the agreement of your marriage. It might mean spending more money than you've agreed to and not telling them about it. It might mean being emotionally intimate with someone at work in a way that's really reserved to your marriage and not sharing that, or that as a way to get. When we do that, we're looking to get fulfillment from someone outside the marriage because we're not getting it in the marriage. But since we're not actually having sex with them, it seems like it's okay with us, but it's a breach of the emotional intimacy bond, the commitment of the marriage, because we're being emotionally intimate with another person in a way that should be reserved for our partnership. And it's normal and natural for people when they're in ambivalence to slip into this kind of relationship. Not healthy, all right? Normal and natural. And so if you got that going on, definitely, hey, reach out to me, DM me, let's talk about it. I can help walk you through how to unravel that and take it back to your partner. It could be about unmet expectations. It could be that your emotional growth individually is such that you're just not in sync and you need to get back in sync. And there's a spiral that happens here. Once we become ambivalent, the spiral is a part of us starts looking elsewhere. Sometimes we look to the past. Oh, God, that relationship with Tammy was so amazing. Why can't Sue be more like Tammy? Or it could be looking to the future. Wow, this thing with Sue really isn't working out. Maybe I can meet someone like Tammy. Hey, you're kind of like Tammy. Let's talk. I mean, it can show up in a lot of different ways. And it can escalate, right? So we're going to explore this stuff more in this series. It can escalate from there. It can get to the point where people are physically cheating, where there's ongoing relationships, where there's ongoing financial breaches of trust, where there's all kinds of missteps that build the ambivalence to a crescendo, where there really seems like there is no choice anymore. And the ramifications are that both individuals are going to have higher stress and anxiety. There's going to be relational strain. And when we have stress and anxiety and relational strain, that can drive the ambivalence. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Ambivalence drives stress and anxiety and relational strain. Stress and anxiety and relational strain build up ambivalence. They build each other up. It becomes a cycle of destructive emotion and toxic expression of emotion in the relationship until you either take a step to heal it or take a step to heal it. Take a step to heal it by working on yourself so that you become a better partner, right? We can't fix the relationship. We can influence the relationship by becoming a better partner, or together working on ourselves and the relationship so that we become better partners, or just throwing in the towel and starting over, right? These are all possible choices, but hanging out in the ambivalence without resolving it and letting it blossom and grow is going to bring bitter fruit for you, your partner, and your children. So if you are experiencing any of this, if you're experiencing finger pointing, if you're unsure about the source of this ambivalence and you want to go into it further, listen for the upcoming episodes, right? The upcoming episodes, we're going to go deep with this stuff. We're going to help you to really understand what's driving your ambivalence, how much of the ambivalence is toxic, and how much of it is just, hey, nobody gave me the playbook, all right? So much of the relationship problems that we encounter here at Rich in Relationship have been the result of nobody gave you the playbook. So don't feel bad if you have this going on. I mean, feel bad because it feels sad and hurtful and painful, but don't feel like it's your fault because nobody taught you how to deal with this. We're going to teach you how to meet ambivalence, face it head on, navigate and resolve these differences so that you can get to a place of relational harmony of some kind. And I just want to point out that there are extreme situations where someone's married someone very toxic, where it's not going to be relational harmony with them. It's going to be relational harmony with yourself and knowing how to handle them so that they no longer negatively impact you. And learning strategies for how to handle them that you can pass on to your children without finger pointing their other parent. So sometimes resolving ambivalence when the person on the other side is really toxic means just checking out, cleaning up your side of the street, and teaching your kids how to handle that person without telling them that you're teaching them how to handle that person. Right? And we've got an amazing divorce program for people who are in that situation that meets all income levels or lack of income levels, because I am passionate about helping parents together and apart to build bridges in their relationship so that their children are both nurtured and protected from conflict. I'm Rich Heller at Rich in Relationship, and come back to the next episode. We're going to talk more about finger pointing and the problems that happen there and how to work through it.